The Bennu bird. Inflationary cosmologists viewed the more than 100 billion galaxies as nothing more than quantum mechanics. That is, what is above is what is below. Physicist Brian Greene of Columbia University explains the theoretical inflationary period just before the Big Bang in the following manner. A long time ago, when the universe was enormously dense, its energy was carried by a Higgs field perched at a value far from the lowest point on its potential energy bowl. A Higgs field perched above its zero energy value can provide an outward blast driving space to swell. Green explains that the powerful Higgs or inflaton field rather, the field that generated a massive gravitational repulsion to inflate, caused the universe to swell by a huge factor similar to a molecule of DNA, becoming roughly the size of a Milky Way galaxy in a time much less than the blink of an eye. This resulted because the Higgs field did not reach its lowest energy configuration as the universe cooled, and it became trapped in a higher energy configuration. Caught on this plateau, the Higgs field supercooled, exerting a repulsive gravitational force that drives space to expand. This idea of the primordial Higgs field perched on the plateau of a potential energy bowl is similar to the Egyptian idea about the Bennu bird perched on the primeval mound of manifestation of a tomb or Ra as the creator deity. The Bennu bird is depicted in Plate 7 and Chapter 7 of the Book of the Dead recounts that a tomb was alone on the primordial waters. The text then asserts that yesterday belongs to the deceased and that he knows tomorrow. In answer to the question, what does it mean? The text explains that yesterday is Osiris and tomorrow is Ra when the foes are destroyed and Horus ruled. From the deceased's perspective, as a tomb or Ra, he is the Bennu bird on the Higgs mound of time looking toward the future creation of Earth. Similarly, similarly, and in a less confusing manner, chapter 122 of the Tibetan Recension informs us that the deceased receives everything, for the whole of it has been given to me. He has come out as a Bennu bird and has alighted on the beautiful tree, which is the middle of the island in the flood, as brought out in the Tibetan Recension 189. And it is here that the deceased dwells with the potent noble dead. Even the earliest pyramid texts reinforce the ideas of the deceased's ascension to the primeval hill of the land in the midst of the sea, whose hand no earthling has grasped. The deceased states, I was born in the abyss before the sky existed, before the earth existed, and that he is one of this great company which was born afore and on. Afore time for the deceased is the future of yesterday, which can only be a movement back to the universe, or early universe rather. And that's some lines out of the pyramid text, by the way. In his commentary to the Book of the Dead, Ogden Golet Jr. notes that Herodotus may have made the error that equated the Bennu bird with an Egyptian phoenix, unlike the cyclic phoenix that singes its wings on the flaming sun and dies repeated fiery deaths. The Bennu bird perches on the primeval inflation mound, a meta symbol of an event before the Big Bang, when the universe was whole and the force within it unified. Still, one wonders, how does the deceased move backwards in time to a low entropy event before the Big Bang? This violates the second law of thermodynamics, stating that any real process can only result in entropy increase. Quantum teleportation and left to right movement. In 1993, a team of physicists from IBM, the University of Montreal, the Technion Israel Institute of Technology, and William College found a theoretical way to use quantum mechanics for teleportation. The general idea of teleportation is similar to faxing data. Something is scanned to extract its information, and then data is transmitted to the receiving location to construct a replica. The team of physicists showed that teleportation was possible, but only if the original is destroyed and no information about the quantum state is known. However, the state can be known through a special feature of quantum mechanics called entanglement. Quantum entanglement means the two particles have common properties. If photons are entangled, then measuring one's photon spin around an axis, the other distant photon to have the same spin. With this information, scientists transfer the quantum properties such as polarization state from one photon to another by producing pairs of entanglement photons through parametric down conversion, and by using two photon in interferometry for analyzing the entanglements. The experiment required a pulse of UV light traveling left to right through a nonlinear crystal to create entangled pairs of protons. A and B reflected back through the crystal. The pulse created two more photons, C and D, and photon D was then polarized to a specific X state, and a beam splitter was used to verify a proton acquiring X's polarization. The process of quantum teleportation is similar to what happens to the deceased in the afterlife. The deceased travels to the polar cups to be polarized to a specific state of alignment. Then he merges with the lambda crystal, experiences UV irradiation, and becomes entangled. The text advises the deceased who bonds to the sun god to make a 180-degree turn from his left to his right, a reversal of parity. The text also advises Osiris to make the same change as brought out in the Tibetan recension in 152. Information on the DNA instructions of the DNA sun god then travels to Osiris, receiving location to construct a replica by means of RNA transcription, replication, and translation to proteins. It seems as if we have all the ingredients for quantum teleportation: UV radiation, the crystalline sun god, the desired left-handed rotation of the deceased, and that is imprinted on the Osiris due to the magic of faster than light non-locality. Spooky magic. Einstein called non-locality spooky action at a distance, whereas the Egyptian idea of Heka, or magic in the universe, seems to be equally appropriate for the non-local deceased claims that magic has been given to him more swiftly than a shadow. Further, if we perceive that the deceased and his double has a two cubic system or entanglement pairs composed of deceased double and sun god Osiris, then it is also possible that the emphasis on opening the mouth 4 times may relate to the 4 Bell states that can be realized in quantum teleportation. For example, a qubit in a quantum system that can be in one of the 2 states, a 2 qubit, would have 4 states, which are entanglement pairs. Does this mean it is possible for the deceased to be teleported back to the early universe? Maybe, because if wormholes are possible, then a faster than light particle may be transmitted back to the early universe. A mention in hour 12 of the Amduat, the sun god travels through a serpent from its tail to mouth. We compare this to the holes located at the cell poles for releasing phage progeny that prompted researchers to theorize a transmembrane tunnel out of the cell. Recall that using Seth's interpretation of the B33 as whole cell, or well, as whole pyramid text 291 states, Your honor is removed, O white hole, by him who came forth from the snake. One way a wormhole can be generated is if a black hole is attached to a white hole. A theoretical white hole spew forth matter, and this process could be described as one coming forth from a snake or wormhole. Further, after talking with Hawkins, Andrew Strominger investigated CPT, finding that in 2 dimensions, weak CPT invariance can be restored in a sector of Hilbert space by including the possibility of white hole formation evaporation. The time reverse of black hole formation / evaporation. Could this non-local tunnel, this wormhole, also indicate a movement back in time to the early universe? Wormholes are allowed by the mathematics of general relativity, and some physicists think that the quantum fluctuations of the gravitational field could produce tiny wormholes in the fabric of space. Physicist Kip Thorne investigated this possibility by asking the question, can highly advanced civilizations build wormholes through hyperspace for rapid intercellular travel and machines for traveling backwards in time? First, the wormhole must be held open by exotic ward in time. No, by exotic material with a negative energy density. Vacuum fluctuations of the electromagnetic field is a form of exotic material. But whether or not these fluctuations can hold a wormhole open is unknown. So Thorne decided to compute the behavior of circulating vacuum fluctuations to see if they could destroy a wormhole. He discovered that the fluctuations were infinitely intense for a short period of time at the instant when it is first possible to see the wormhole backwards time travel. Thorne concluded the laws of quantum gravity are hidden from us, or rather hiding from us the answer to whether wormholes can be converted successfully into time machines. However, in the Egyptian afterlife, human bodies are not going through wormholes. Recombinant phage progeny are. That is, If there were another source of exotic material with gravitational repulsive negative energy available to hold the wormhole open long enough to make it a quantum time machine for a molecule, solar physicists have found negative energy waves in the solar atmosphere. In particular, in magnetic flux tubes, there are surface modes with negative energy. For coronal loops, they found that only very high speed flows can produce negative energy slow body modes. In solar wind flow structure, both slow and fast modes have negative energy. It may be possible that the deceased sun god is a negative energy source that may hold the transmembrane tunnel or wormhole open for travel back to the early universe. If this doesn't work, physicist Robert Lowell Forward notes that a heavy atomic nucleus in a strong magnetic field could elongate into a cylinder to create a time machine. Gamma rays would allow this information to be sent back in time. So our 12th hour Amduat serpent may represent an elongated heavy nucleus or time tunnel through which the sun god and his millions travel back to the early universe. Egyptian textual references and modern physics indicate that this may actually be possible. The negative confession. It may then be possible that the negative confession of the deceased signifies the idea of negative energy. 3 of the deceased's confessions suggest time travel. O burning one who came forth backwards, I have not told lies. O he whose face is behind him who comes forth from this hole, I have not caused anyone to weep. O who came forth from the primordial waters, my voice was not loud. Coming forth backwards suggests the idea of going faster than light or backwards in time. If you watch an object coming towards you faster than light, you will see it going away from you, and then it will appear near to you at the end of its journey before the light arrives from further off, telling you of its coming. He whose face is behind him, who came forth from his hole, suggests the same idea of backwards time movement from a wormhole, while IHY coming forth from the primordial waters points to the Big Bang Theory or the Big Bang era, rather. These indicators of faster than light time travel backwards suggest that the Egyptians were aware of the importance of a confession or admission of negative energy. The positive confession. By comparing Egyptian ideas to discoveries in modern physics, we can unveil the pharaoh's enormous understanding of the earth, sun, stars, and cosmos. First, the Egyptian movement of the deceased and his double to the northern polar region of earth suggests the long-lived kaon decay into peons that violate CPT symmetry and ultimately transform into massless boson wearing a halo. Because kaon decay violates time reversal, time has a backwards direction of flow, which is also evident in the funerary text. Second, the text describes copying events within a context of non-locality that suggests the potential for quantum teleportation, a process very similar to spontaneous RNA transcription and replication events on the quantum level. More interesting and in line with T violation, the text and images suggest a movement a movement back to the early universe, rather, because possibly by means of a wormhole or extended atomic structure acting as a time machine. This idea is supported by the presence of negative energy structures in coronal loops and magnetic flux tubes, implying the supermolecular sun god may have the potential to hold open a wormhole rather, in time with exotic matter or negative energy. Third, the creation, the afterlife of the recombinant species is related to the underlying asymmetry of the weak interaction with which violates charge parity and time. So it seems that we can reevaluate these ideas by saying that the deceased movements or the deceased's movement to the polar cusp results in a backwards time movement to the early universe at the Planck length. Fourth, from our perspective on Earth, we could date the first competition or the first competition between CI and crow protein to the birth of our solar system 4.5 billion years ago. The competition between CI and crow proteins is actually the competition between photosynthesis and chemiluminescence. Production of CI protein results in our world and photosynthesis, whereas crow protein production results in chemiluminescence or weak force interactions, important in the energy generating process of stars. However, because of the human element, crow production results not in the chemiluminescence but in the bioluminescent life form. From that may restore the equivalence of matter and antimatter. According to physicists, supernova data indicate that ordinary matter such as our cells is 4% of the mass slash energy of the universe, with dark matter comprising 21% and dark energy 75%. Apparently, the pharaohs have come up with an afterlife strategy on real physics to restore us to the early universe. The first stage is a time reverse movement of one's consciousness to the first precoriote 3.8 billion years ago, within which lambda genomes resided as a prophet. Here, at the lambda genome under crow control, rather, a new recombinant species is born, which then tunnels out of the host cell, traveling backwards in time to the early universe. A modern geneticist might say that lambda chromosomes has systematic affinities across several genes for two particular lineages, whereas physicists might say that this supersymmetry is similar to every fermion having a boson twin and the ability to become it through the mysterious kaon decay. Nonetheless, the catalyst for transformation is the deceased's presence at the northern polar cusp for spontaneous symmetry breaking. It may be that without terminal or thermal agitation at the pole, a ground state is achieved in which the particle spins point to a single direction due to the presence of iron nuclei at the cusp. In ferromagnetism, the spin tend to align spontaneously without any applied field, and this is a quantum mechanical effect due to the Pauli principle. Put simply, two electrons with the same spin cannot lie at the same position, so their repulsion lowers their electrostatic energy, inducing the electrons to align. The pharaoh may be indicating this synchronicity by the constant presence of the deceased's double particle or antiparticle pair. Exactly how ferromagnetism, symmetry, breaking, and temperature at the northern cusp contribute to the long-range order of the thesis transformation from fermion to boson must be poised by this researcher as an outstanding question for further investigation. Still, in light of the thesis movement backwards in time in the black hole, one wonders if the pharaoh knew what to expect when the space-time ceased to exist near the singularity. Did they know that space and time would become unglued, ruptured? Did they know that space and time is tightly interwoven like a piece of wood impregnated with water? According to Kip Thorne's application of this analogy, and he states, the singularity and the laws of quantum gravity that rule it are like a fire into which the water impregnated wood is thrown. The fire boils in the water out of the wood, leaving the wood alone and vulnerable. In the singularity, the laws of quantum gravity destroyed time, leaving space alone and vulnerable. The fire then converts the wood into a froth of flakes and ashes. The laws of quantum gravity then convert space into a random probabilistic froth. The sea states, I am the ore of Ra with which the old ones are rolled. I will be neither burnt up nor scorched, he continues in Tibetan Recension 63. I am not equipped or with Ra is rolled with the old one, are rolled, and the efflux of Osiris is upraised at the lake of flames, which does not burn. Remarkably, the pharaohs used an analogy similar to Kip Thorne's, but the deceased is not buried in the flames through which the efflux of Osiris or the recombinant species is upraised. What is amazing is that Kip Thorne and the pharaohs used the same metaphor, water impregnated wood, or an ore in fire, to describe the dynamics of singularity. Despite 5,000 years of time, 21st century man still uses the same metaphors to explain scientific ideas. Another indicator of the pharaoh's understanding of black and white holes in the cone-shaped upper Egyptian white crown, a fair representation of a white hole, also referred to as green, the red crown sports the Fibonacci series spiral, suggesting the exponential growth of nature, with the emphasis on the whole black hole, or rather black eye and white eye of Horus and the double crown. It is evident that the deceased travels through a black hole to a white hole to exist in the early universe where the galaxies are bluer and brighter that they are today, or than they are today. All right, and we finally have objective 10 completed. The Book of Two Ways, the Edifice of Taharqa, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead, including the Tibetan recension, support the interpretation of the meta symbols derived from the major idea strands in the pyramid and coffin text. and the analysis of the Amduat and the Book of Gates. Man, we got a lot covered today, and well, we just got to the end of this chapter today. But once again, it's about 3 of these parts. But get it. Peace kings, peace queens. I'll holler at you later.